1980s were to become a very important time for the single lens camera manufacturing industry. In the 70s, the single lens cameras had grown in popularity and they were beginning to be more and more affordable. And not only were they more affordable, they were getting easier to use. Light meters were the norm. We were beginning to get towards some form of automation with exposure. What was very popular was something called Aperture priority, and Pentax had launched something called an ME Super, and then it became the ME Super, which was an Aperture priority camera with some manual override. And other manufacturers began to do similar cameras. And the camera I'm going to talk about now is a camera which I think was very much influenced by the ME Super and uses some of the same features but in a slightly different manner. It's a camera which I had never really used. I was aware of it. I was aware of it in the 1980s, and I sort of slightly looked down upon it because I had bought a ME Super in 1983. I bought it new, paid about £138, and I've still got that camera. This is not a Pentax. This is a Cosina. Now, the Cosina was a cheaper camera than the Pentax, and the Cosina brand, it had quite a good reputation, but it wasn't one of the top big boys like Canon and Pentax and Olympus. In the 1980s, you very much got this sort of different layers of manufacturing. Nikon saw itself as being near the top, and then you got manufacturers like Cosina and Ricoh and a whole lot of others, slightly sort of low pecking order, you could say, but they were still good cameras. Let's look at the program. It's actually called a Computer CT7. Computers were just beginning to come in, and the computer was quite a good in Word. Now, what we've got here is a manual focusing camera, and if we were to use this camera, we simply load a 35mm cassette in the back and manually load. There's no motor rind. I think there's an optional motor rind on this camera, and it would have originally probably came with a fixed focal length lens of 15mm, and it was probably a Cosina lens. This model has got a later Sigma zoom on, which is absolutely fine. Now let's have a look. So we've loaded the film, we've set our ASA, which is set on this round button here, and I've suddenly noticed I've had a film through this today, and I've actually had it set at 200 ASA, and it was actually 100 ASA film, so I need to give it a little bit longer when I come to develop the film. Now, so you set the ISO here, you focus the camera, but what about the aperture, and what about the metering? Well, we've got two choices here. We have a little lever here called auto. If we press that, then we can then select whatever aperture we like, and the camera will automatically set the shutter speed. So for example, in here at the moment, if I half press, I've got a little LED coming up saying that it's about a 30th of a second on f8 if I point it towards the light. And if I stop down, I can see that progressively the shutter speed is slowing down. So that is on auto. We then have this MS, and you can hear that little beep there, and the MS is for manual flash, and that sets the camera at 125. Now on the ME Super, which I have done a video on, there's a little rotary control, and that rotary control can over years build up dirt. You haven't got a rotary control here, and to my great surprise I actually quite like these buttons, and particularly on this example of this camera it survived really well. And I always thought these buttons were going to be a bit of a fiddle, and compared to the ME Super I thought the design just wasn't as nice. But when I've come to use the camera I actually found it very good to use. So also if we are going on aperture priority, M8 if we want to do flash, and there's a hot shoe for flash here. And finally, if we want to set our own shutter speeds, we actually then go to the up and down, and we can actually, I have to press the M8 again, and then I can select up and down to actually select whatever shutter speed I want. So the camera is both what they would call semi-automatic aperture priority and manual, so we can manually set whatever shutter speed we want and whatever aperture we want. And we've also got flashing, as we do that, what it thinks the shutter speed ought to be. So we have got some metering there as well. Other features were a sophisticated self timer, well, a beep. It takes the Pentax K mount, which was very popular at the time and was almost like a universal mount. So as you can see there, it takes the Pentax K, so we match up the two dots. It's a very light camera, and when you consider the price of something like the ME Super is actually quite a reasonably priced camera on the second-hand market, where the K1000 you can easily spend 140, 150 pounds. One of these you could probably get between 20 and 50 pounds. So you might even get one cheaper. So this is actually really good value for money. Let's see how I got on when I actually used the camera. The first photograph is taken of some cottages in the small village of Morton, and it was quite late one autumn afternoon, so the light is not the best type of light in that it's just not much light. However, I think the lens coped quite well, and I was pleased with the camera, the sharpness of the lens. I mean, it's a zoom lens, and I'm on probably about 5 or 4.2, but this has come out really nice and sharp, that letterbox there, and it just proves to me how a moderately cheap camera can actually perform very well. Again, we've got a nice range of greys. I quite like the decay here of this poor telephone box that is in dire need of paint, but it probably isn't being used any longer. The door handles come out well. Again, I quite like the amount of greys there. We've got a good tonal range. This is a camera that is performing, I think, very well in quite a difficult situation. The lack of light, but I like the subject matter. These cottages are owned, I think, by the local landowner, and they need a little bit of attention, I think. I quite like this private sign, so we kept out of obviously the path there, but again, good tones, nice sharpness. Remember, it's a zoom lens, but it is a Sigma lens. I think this was about the last photograph I did. This is of something called a finger post, which is has the grid reference on the top. This is a camera I really enjoyed using. Thanks for watching.